Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 40 minutes since my last confession, where I traded my pack filler to an 8-year-old for his mum's credit card. But this time, I'm down bad. I am a Labrynth player. And I like it. And not just because I think it's fun to stun my opponent, but also I get this funny, tight and wet feeling in my underpants.
Sir, we've told you this before. This is a McDonald's drive-thru. Can we just take your order, please?
Oh, yeah, right. 8,000 chicken tenders, please. I'll be paying by card.
Motherfucker, get back here, you little shit!
You're lying! Please do not say fuck or bugger!
Let me tell you how to play Labrynth the wrong way. Usually when I make one of these, it's about a deck no one cares about because there's more viable options. Not today. Today, I'm taking the popular option and showing you just how much you've been missing, like a life coach opening your third eye and telling you, the sink is at perfect groin level, so why shouldn't you piss in it? It's eco-friendly and cost-efficient. I can't wash my hands in the toilet after I take a piss. I'll be washing my hands with piss if that's the case. Of course, these teachings don't apply to Tailment players. They have absolutely no problem recycling their discarded fluids. Anyways, card games. Most Labrynth decks look like the new Eldritch Stun deck with a few aids thrown into the mix. And that's the reason I like Labrynth. It lets me spread my venereal diseases. Side note, I absolutely lived for the Layer of Darkness structure deck because it enabled me the playstyle of flip deck dev, dab, and deviate to another table because no one can handle a card that removes all the monsters in their hand and field. And I just won the game. Labrynth is just like that, but it has better waifus. And it's not shit. So, what do? Let's start with the trap cards. Welcome Labrynth simply summons a Labrynth monster from your deck, and when it's in the grave, if a monster leaves the field from a trap card effect, you can reset it to your field. Big Welcome Labrynth summons a Labrynth from the anywhere, then it bounces a monster from your field to your hand. So the mandatory bounce can trigger the reset effect of Welcome Labrynth. Big Welcome can also banish itself from the grave to bounce a monster, but it's recommended you have a level 8 fiend monster in the field when you use it. Fair Welcome Labrynth can be activated only when your opponent attacks, and it destroys a card on the field and then sets a non-Labrynth trap from your deck. Labrynth Barrage can chain to a trap card and it copies that effect. I really like this card, because you can copy a hard once per turn effect without it being a hard once per turn effect. Unfortunately, it's completely impractical. Your opponent can chain block it, but if they don't, it can double dip Imperm, D-Barrier, Ice Dragon Prisons, and so on and so forth. And it can uniquely play around every hard once per turn on a normal trap in the game, including the welcome traps. Now, for a group of cards that bring my ability to identify an individual's sex into question, and therefore questions my sexuality. Ariane summons a level 4 fiend monster from the deck after discarding a normal trap. And the monster to summon is Arianna. When she's summoned, she adds a lab card from deck to hand, an effect that every deck needs. Oh, but the advantage doesn't end there. These bottom bitches are gonna make us some mad bank. When a monster leaves the field from a trap, they both let us draw a card and then special summon a fiend from our hand or set a trap from our hand. There's no restrictions on level or name of the fiend monster, so you can summon cards like End of Anubis to Gravelock everyone, Dark Ruler Hades to kill floating effects, or Lovely Labrynth of the Silver Castle. She protects your activated traps, she resets traps in your grave, and when a monster leaves the field from a normal trap, she destroys a card on the field or a random card in your opponent's hand. She's got your back, she provides, and then scorns your enemies. She's a neat perfect woman. And so is Lady Labrynth of the Silver Castle, a card that can't be targeted or destroyed by opponent's card effects when you have a set card. She special summons herself when you activate a trap or Labrynth effect, and when you activate a trap, she can set a trap directly from your deck. She's independent, jumps into action, and gets you nice things. So you can begin to see the groundwork for the playstyle of this deck. Establish your machine with both the servants and the ladies, remove monsters with trap cards, gain advantage, rinse and repeat. Only problem is, for a deck that focuses on removing monsters with traps, it doesn't have a lot of traps to remove your opponent's monsters with. It's got one banish effect, and an archetypal Sakuretsu armor that's kinda shit. Let's talk about the field spell, Labrynth. It adds a mandatory effect to all of your welcome Labyrinth cards. That effect is, and after that, destroy one card. And if you activated a non-Labyrinth trap, you can special summon a fiend monster from your hand. This just gives you more of what you already need. Gives you advantage while removing monsters, which if you think about it, if you use the added effect with a welcome card, it nets you a +2. Only problem with Labrynth is it needs a combo off all your welcome cards. One of them can constantly recycle itself, but we can't rely on this many cards on our board in order for it to be effective. And then we have the furniture. The oven and the chandelier can both discard themselves and a card from your hand to set a Labyrinth spell or trap from your hand or deck to the field. They can also recycle themselves when a monster leaves the field from a normal trap effect. Seeing a little pattern here. Cooclock can discard itself to activate a trap card that was set this turn. And it can recycle itself when you discard a card for a normal trap card or a Labyrinth effect. So you can recycle it if you choose to activate the lights in the oven. They both discard themselves and a card to set a trap card for your hand or deck. This triggers Cooclock to bring it back to your hand. These three basically let you play trap cards during your first turn. So that's all the Labyrinth cards that are worth running, but we can't really rely on Labyrinth to move monsters with welcome cards. So let's just fill the deck with removal traps like Compulse, and on top of that, the usual hand trap staples, you name it. But the meat of a Labyrinth deck comes from virus cards. They all do basically the same shit, it's just coming from a different arsehole. All of them, you need to tribute a dark monster with however much attack or defense, and then they destroy all spells, traps, or monsters of a certain stat value on the field and hand, and then destroys all cards your opponent draws of that card type for the next 3 turns. These are my favourite kinds of cards, and I'll be honest, I'm completely biased towards them. So when I flip these cards and people complain about Eradicator and deck dev saying, oh, they're completely unbalanced. Yeah, they are. Cry about it. Alternatively, you can be that guy that fills your deck with Goes and Match Rivalry of Warlords, Summon Limit, blah blah blah, and bring a sick new layer to the sexual undertones of an already charged deck. So, that's the playstyle. You remove monsters with traps, get advantage, flip viruses, wait for victory. But I have some personal problems with this deck that I'm going to impose on you. For starters, I refuse to sacrifice the dummy mummy for the virus cards. Do not as I do, it's a me issue. Labyrinth also rely heavily on trap cards, a card type that's slower than Nan running a marathon, God rest her soul. And finally, it needs resources. A lot of them, so the early turns can be a bit of a struggle to get through. But we can play around all of this, not by outpacing our opponent, but by driving them into a famine. If we take cards from our opponent first, we can outpace them that way. And the best way to do this is with a hand loop, with cards like Eradicator, Full Force and Deck Dev, Lovely Lady to rip cards out the hand, Delinquent Duo and Gumblar Dragon. But there's a very small problem with that plan. I would never be rid of my beloved, and Delinquent Duo and Gumblar Dragon are banned. So hand looping is going to be very, very difficult. Or so you may think. As of the recording of this video, this card has not hit Master Duel or the TCG. So now let's talk about Arias, the Labyrinth Butler. This card enables you to perform a complete hand loop. Let me explain. We're about to delve into the most unique and problematic card in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That card is Mystical Ref Panel. Mystical Ref Panel takes a spell card that affects only one player and moves that effect to the other player. Now here's the tricky part. There's nothing in the game that specifically says target one player, so sometimes it's very unclear, but cards like Pot of Greed counters targeting a player, cards like Regeki doesn't. Card of Demise affects both players, so it can't be flipped with Ref Panel. Into the Void targets only one player and it affects only one player. Therefore, it can be flipped with Ref Panel. But wait, why would we want to give our opponent a free draw? Well, the reason is, when you flip Into the Void, it also flips the downside. So at the end of your turn, your opponent must discard their whole hand. Until this point, this was a meme strategy and considered too slow for any deck, because by the time turn 3 or 4 rolls around, there's no point in trying, because you would have already lost. Arias can set a trap card from your to your field with the power of premature ejaculation, meaning you can activate at the same time it was set. Arias, ref panel, and Into the Void throws away your opponent's hand turn 1. Unfortunately, TCG players have Into the Void at 1, but you could replace it with Allure of Darkness and hope your opponent has no dark monsters in hand to banish. High risk, high reward gamble for those of you who developed a dopamine deficiency from looking at the Servant's programming socks and wondering if the trap theming has a double meaning.
You're welcome, bro.
Here's a fun idea I just had. You can also play Witch's Strike, because who the fuck expects anyone to play Witch's Strike? Well, I'll tell you. The madman who lets his cards get negated and appropriately responds not with a retaliating negate, but with a card that flips the fucking table on your opponent. A Witch's Strike player fears no negates, but encourages them. Because who cares if you can't get your draw from desires, but you can turn it into a -5 to the other player.
Witch's Strike is really bad, and they can't stop Imperma or Ash.
Yes, I know, and I don't care. Anyways, back to Ref Panel. So Ref Panel is a pretty cool interaction, and one that I hope won't be used at YCS and get Ref Panel banned. Infinite Imperm is Infinite Imperm. I can honestly go on for ages about why this is the best hand trap in the game, but I'm not gonna. Yet. Destruction Dharma Karma Cannon. It has a very funny name, and it's got a very diverse usage. Let's instead talk about Book of Moon and Book of Eclipse. Both are very strong cards, and keep seeing play every now and then, and these cards are never going to not be relevant. Because, like, the bizarre nature of the card. Again, I can go on to why Book of Moon and Book of Eclipse are so good, and will forever be good, and just never hit the ban list. But this video is, not about that. It's about my growing boner for Labyrinth. Anyways, Destruction Dharma Karma Cannon is the best parts of both of these cards, with the board wipe effect for link monsters. It flips every monster face down and destroys any monsters that are left face up. What does this mean? Well, it means it's a board wipe that's, not just for link monsters specifically, but it can also be a threatening roar during your opponent's battle phase. It can be used to attack over high attack, low defense monsters during your battle phase. It's a one-turn skill drain, and it's effectively a D barrier. Did you know? Face down monsters can't be used for Synchro, Xyz, Link, or Contact Fusion. But, regular fusion with a spell card? Yeah, no, sorry, you're on your own there, champ. But it's a very cool card, nonetheless. Notice how as well, we haven't really spoke about the extra deck for Labyrinth. Well, that's because they just, don't use it. I mean, now that it's come out, they use Chaos Angel, but that's about it. That means there are at least 13 places in the extra deck to fill with just nonsense and targets for cards like Dogmatika Punishment. You send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard to destroy a card, but it locks you out the extra deck for the next couple turns. Now, targets I like to send with Dogmatika Punishment are skeletons. Okay, alright, let me explain. Dogmatika Punishment stops extra deck summons for a turn, so that's exactly why we need to send one that searches Fossil Fusion. Save that in our hand for a rainy day and swing for game. Waiting extra turns doesn't mean shit to us lab players. Labyrinth wants a long, long game. On top of that, I, don't have the money to buy a Garura, so I'm improvising. Is also good, but the, Fossil Fusion have the Fossil Fusion monsters that banish up from the grave to destroy a card have a bit of a delay to them. Unst is instant and has, funny chain link shenanigans. Omega recycles cards, but, there's something about the Fossil Fusions I just like the option to just wait to pop a card and, banish cards out of their graveyard with Fossil Fusion. It's just a neat thing to do. Alternatively, we can lay a very sneaky special trap card to cheat out monsters from the extra deck that have absolutely no business being in there. Of course, I'm talking about Waking the Dragon. Now, there are plenty of back row protections in this deck with the Lady and Lord of the Heavenly Prison, should you be inclined to run that. This is where the age-old technique of baiting your opponent comes in. We set our cards with no protection and hope for our opponent to waste a lightning storm hitting our back row, activating Waking the Dragon, and then we summon isn't something from our extra deck that's going to be problematic. Now, there is a small selection of cards we can cheat onto the board. We can drop an Omega down there to help accommodate the hand looping. Baron, if you have one. Red Eyes Dragoon for, a hard to out negate. Last Warrior from Another Planet is probably the most punishing floodgate in the game. Nature Exterio is very good, but unfortunately it doesn't negate monster effects, so it's not foolproof, it can be outed. Other problem is we need to banish cards from our graveyard, and we kinda like those being there. You could also put in Naturia Beast, that's great, it mills cards, but it only negates spell cards. My favourite card to summon is Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Now I've already sung the praises of this card 5 years ago, and I still think it holds up. It's imperm, but better. And that's how you ruin a perfectly good deck. Obviously, Labyrinth has its problems and counters. The monsters just kind of die to zombie world, Protoss, and of course, Jin. Given the correct preparation, and, just a few curveballs, I truly believe that this deck can be one of the best and long-standing decks in the game. And it has tech options too. Absolute King Backjack and Dark Sacrifice, Wannabe. You can tech in Nemorelli if you want, Unchains, fucking Dark Worlds, go wild. Like, it has such generic interaction with fiends that you can just mix it into whatever and come up with your own mad concoctions. Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg of playing into the Labyrinth's playstyle of, ooh, I like trap cards, I like to flip trap cards. I like to annoy my opponent with trap cards. But you can mix in so much stuff with it and just go wild with it. Just give it a go, try it, see what happens. And, that's kind of what this deck is all about. This is what Yugo's about. This is what these videos are all about. It's about finding ways to spice up stagnant, stale decks, finding a silly, fun way to play for it. Like, it might not always win, but you can get a mad satisfaction about trying something new and just seeing what happens. And when that something new wins, that's when you know you've got a fun deck. And that's when you can know you could be onto something grand, something big. Hell, this might take a YCS. Probably not, but, I like to dream. Variety is the spice of life. So why not spice up your games? Or you can do this to just fuck with people. This deck is the very definition of interacting with your opponent. It's just not interaction in a way that they'll be happy with. And isn't that what Yu-Gi-Oh's all about, really? I mean, I know I said it was about something else earlier, but it's also about that. It's about a lot of things. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you like these videos in the comments, and what you like, what you hate, if you want to see videos in the form of, ruining perfect good stuff, or if you want me to just talk about weird shit, or just theory crafting ways to play, all sorts of decks. Let me know if there's anything, if you need to mix up the format a little bit, layout, whatever. I'm completely unstructured in this, and I'm just doing things, clicking buttons, and whatnot. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. More content to come. Good luck, and have fun.